Hello, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. I know after lunch slump, we get a little quiet. So hopefully you had some coffee, maybe a couple sodas to keep that energy up. We've got a great afternoon session ahead. I want to introduce our next speaker, Simone Steele, joining us this afternoon. Simone Steele is the CIO at Deutsche Bank. She's going to look at the waves of transformation shaping financial services. This is digital, cloud, big data, and AI, and what they really mean for data and technology leaders that are trying to build something durable. So, Simone, please join us on stage. Thank you for being our afternoon lunch speaker. You got to get these people like riled up here, you know. I don't know if we're going to start making them doing some jumping jacks or what.
Thank you very much. Here's the clicker. Well, first, whoever took pictures of the previous slide, please delete it because the title had been put wrong on that slide. This is really what I do. I'm currently the CIO for data and AI for the corporate bank part of Deutsche Bank. It's a very new construct for us, as in less than 2 years old, where we are bringing data and AI closer to engineering, closer to the CIOs that deliver value via the business lines at Deutsche Bank. But my message here today, and hopefully we get a few more people to kind of drum up some excitement about ethics in delivery of whatever that you deliver. And I'm speaking mostly from the points of view of having had some academic introduction to computing, data processing those days, economics and data science, having worked for technology companies for a big period of my professional life, but mostly having applied all of that in financial services. So take that as my bias, my perspective, and hopefully that will make more sense when I tell my story. And this story, first of all, I would like to debunk the title of the presentation. When we say something around sustainability, we're clearly thinking about the big minds that are helping us shape the future of infrastructure. Is AI really going to take all our energy and our water from the public service systems? And here I'm talking about sustainability for us, for technology leaders. And I'm looking for a definition that can express that very succinctly, that can guide my actions every day. That's what I found as the most impactful. I need to meet present needs. We all have jobs to do, and we are trying to make our businesses successful and safely so. But actually, what is undermining the next generation of that kind of follows us? Generation of leaders, generation of engineers, generation of consumers. And for me, the important thing is to not just look at the headlines and not just look at the demand for energy, the demand for natural resources, sometimes the abuse of legislation and the gaps in legislation that allows us to grow too rapidly in some cases without considering future generations. I'm talking more about professional ethics. And I'm also a recovering CIO. I put CIO, CTO, CDAO, whatever variations you might encounter in your organization, because I'm a recovering chief data officer when I work for a retail bank here in the UK. And the questions that we are asked as leaders to answer are very repetitive. And they get answered in a very, I would say, experiential way, not something that we actually build on top of knowledge. And the question for sustainability has been present in a data conversation, in an AI conversation, and a technology conversation. But at the same time, the same board members, the same senior leadership group is a little bit puzzled by the fact that costs keep going up. Of course, the demand keeps going up. We have technology-driven businesses, so it's not surprising that we want to experiment, that we want to expand. But these two things are not seen next to each other. And that's, for me, the insights that I wanted to share with you and how I would like to take this to ethical behavior. So I'm going to very quickly, because it's a post-lunch session, go through a bit of situation awareness, practical techniques that I have been adopting, and also what I want to land in terms of professional accountability as hopefully a unique message in an event like this that has covered so much ground already. So I was going to build this graph up, right, but it will take far too long. You can see the timer is ticking. I struggle to express my journey from before time, before computers, I guess, before 1980 to now, when it comes to working for very large, complex organizations and trying to keep up with the modernization of ways of working, modernization of our public infrastructure, the internet, cloud computing. You can follow the blue line at your leisure. I should have had a laser pointer here, but never mind. So the blue line represents the waves of expectation, the waves of progress within information technology, from infrastructure to practices that we adopt. And beyond, right? We are here in the 2020s when open source generative AI, only 3-4 years ago, has made a huge impact, but staring at quantum computing being commercially viable and staring at potentially even bigger transformation. But my life is in the orange graph. Maybe some of you that have been here for a long time, where there are new paradigms that come with those technologies. And sometimes we adopt the technology with old paradigms, and that kind of slows us down. We are not quite on point. Understanding new risks that come with exploiting those technologies. It could be regulatory risk, it could be commercial, and it could be safety risks. And then accumulating then technical debt. Lots of people talked about this morning, and it's very interesting, especially to see Satya talking about decommissioning legacy, which I'm going to touch upon a little bit further. That's what is answering the questions that my board is asking me. Is it sustainable to continue like this? Well, it is, but it took 2 years, 10 years to catch up initially with technology and capability, but now it's going to take 30 if we don't completely adjust. And ultimately, the question of sustainability and the question of cost can be explained with a simple model, a simple mental model, perhaps not yet articulated more scientifically. So what I learned from this graph is that I want the orange line to get closer to my gray line, right? I want it to get closer to the potential of value that I can deliver, not the actual value that is happening there on the orange line. And I want to make an appeal for the urgency of decommissioning old parts of the stack, and doing that at a faster pace than building new, because you know how these curves are going to behave. If I don't fix the pace, there's no point trying to fix the curve. And how do I translate that into a humanly understood message where people don't have necessarily the same experiences that you've had in your career? So I am trying to introduce the risks of multiplying data without sustainability considerations. And why am I talking about data? Because as the businesses get more digital, and some claim to be fully digital, data is quite frankly the manifestation of your product. And I thought, okay, maybe there is something to follow down that path. So, my banking systems, right? Sorry about the Jenga. The Jenga thing is perfect for this example today. And replace your banking systems with whatever systems may make your business tick. But in my context, data was the asset that we needed to protect. We need to control. We need to prepare for business continuity, disaster recovery. We have to clearly evergreen your hardware, evergreen your software, and get knowledge to transcend a particular team and actually transcend a generation of teams to be able to maintain that data integral. As we put this is one World Trade Center new, right? If you put this on top of my old barn, which is what really happened in quite a lot of banks with cloud and digital transformation in the early 2000s, you introduced a copy of everything, most likely. And with that copy, so you're doing it twice, right? You have more access controls, more security, more backups, more regulatory compliance, more. And now you have one other factor, which is to keep them in sync. That is a really, really hard concept to communicate. And I don't mind actually walking and drawing this particular drawing in a board to say, this is what's making you less sustainable. This is what's making you more costly, because you are having to keep two realities in sync on top of each other. And more recently, with the advent of AI, I put the Burj Khalifa, obviously not to scale in any of those pictures, but it is extremely sophisticated, shiny, highly technologically advanced, but it's sitting on top of my barn, right? And I have multiplied now my access problems, my security problems, my disaster recovery problems by 3, and my secret gray lines that communicate and keep them aligned, the Jenga thing standing up, by 2. Very simplistic, but quite frankly, anything more complicated than this becomes a bit too academic or cerebral, as I've been accused of being once. So what is my argument? Is that every year, and if you're lucky every quarter, if you have a rolling budget, and if your company is a big fan of beyond budgeting, you can have more opportunities to have this conversation. But I only have once a year. And that is my change budget, my investment. Everybody gets really excited, and we're going to put all our return on investment arguments to work for us to do the right thing for the business goals, for the business outcomes. But then what happens is, we forgot what happened last year and the year before and the decade before and since time began. And running and decommissioning budgets become the cost problem. So this lifetime cost of, and the lifetime habit of cutting costs when they get too large without understanding why they're getting too large is what I'm trying to attack in my current job. So my formula is going to be, simplistically, if you give me X amount of money, you have to give me 10x for the duration of the lifetime you expect from this solution. And it's almost like building a little bank account for us to be able to act on what? Decommissioning, simplification. I love the panel discussion, especially the comment on complexity is your enemy. This is materializing itself financially by this argument. And I need to now step up my techniques as a CTO, as an ex-CTO, because I still hold some of the engineering responsibilities in the data and AI space for the company, to build upon knowledge from other industries that are more mature. Because I don't think I have time to catch up. If I do get that funding, how would I apply it? How would I make this a discipline rather than a crusade? And I'm trying to now put into my business case, what is the full life cycle of what's being built? What is the expected decay, right? Is my structure going to crumble? What is the expected life cycle of things that I built today that have already become obsolete yesterday? So how can I model that based on maybe structural engineering, maybe logistics, maybe other disciplines that have been much more mature, maybe aerospace? What is the body of knowledge that we now need to start formalizing? And especially formalizing when it comes to knowledge retention and standards. And those things shouldn't really be swear words, but just talking about knowledge management in some organizations is a bit like a luxury. It's like, what do you mean, right? Just unleash an LLM on top of your old Confluence pages, and then you know what answers you're going to get. And finally, mature professions and mature industries have developed, especially in critical industries. I'm sure quite a lot of us here operating in critical services. They cannot be left to chance. Yeah, so a code of conduct and a following the ethics of your profession is something that I'm trying to embed in my decision making, in how I manage the teams, especially how we hire and how we give people career progression and career advice. And especially if we are talking about innovation with safety, again, with the panel just before lunch, there is this wonderful dynamics of, security is part of what you do. Security is part of your product. Are our incentives aligned with that? Maybe not. So is our ethics, our ethical behavior, the thing that is the fallback? Probably yes. And I keep thinking about the post office scandal, right? If people in the support function speak up, but the leaders are not happy with what's being raised, we can create really bad outcomes, bad dynamics within a team. So what are my layers then to express this change in tone, change in technique, to talk about budget and to talk about investments in technology? First is what I try to model with the towers, right? For any business case, we are not just going to look at the ROI of a feature, right? So this has to be a ground rule for me. And the cost cutting, the automating processes that shouldn't exist is a part of this problem. Right? That's why the Burj Khalifa is sitting on top of World Trade Center, on top of the barn, because we are very accustomed to the ROI saying, you automate this thing and we are going to save this much. And bringing our profession to be more than engineers and more systems analysts of the olden days, and showing complexity of systems is difficult. And it's very difficult without boring everybody, because I can see also a few of the ones doing the post-lunch nap, right? It's really not exciting. So I need techniques. I need quick visual, non-technical, something that does not alienate others to be able to engage in this conversation. And then for me, translating the efficiency of automating something into the efficiency you gain from simplifying something is the key argument to that kind of 10x lifetime cost becoming smaller year on year. And that is where you're going to get your costs, dear board member. This is where you're going to get your costs to not balloon as you balloon your use cases. So this is my situation awareness part. And what I have tried so far, with partial success, but making the systems visible, even if it's with the Jenga tower, is helpful. Finding a more formal language, perhaps how do you create maps for situation awareness with your business, would be even more helpful. We don't have time for that today, but this is an experiment I'm running. Offer always an optimization and a replacement option compared to the new shiny request. Because behind every new shiny request, there is an intent to abstract, virtualize, to kind of tape over the cracks. And, find your formula, right? So for some systems, actually, you could get to up to 1,000 times the cost that you spend building it to maintain it forever with all the factors we covered here today. And just for context, in the corporate bank at Deutsche Bank, there are 974 applications under my corporate bank umbrella, right? So how do you get to 974 applications, like one at a time, right? One little ROI case at a time. And with agentic AI, we are beginning to create our governance framework for keeping track of those things, keeping observability at the forefront of our minds. This is going to balloon even more. And now, I haven't started that yet, but this is like an intent, so I can pursue and come back maybe next year and say, what happened to my waste disposal decommissioning tax? Because that is, it needs, I think, as a group of professionals, we need some shorthand for complex topics that don't alienate the CFO, the CDO, and other, our marketing department. What is this decommissioning tax? And it's very much like my council tax, I get my rubbish collected and sometimes my road fixed. So what is it for us because of the invisible nature of our jobs? So great success with offer of optimization and replacement in this current budget cycle. The others are up for the visibility. We're making really good strides in making the system visible in a human language. Not so much on my ROI formula because it depends on each one of those 974 applications. But I think it's really seen as positive way of changing the narrative. And learning from other industries, especially aeronautics. You know, I have my checklist. I love the checklist manifesto if you haven't read. Always think decommissioning first. I'm always thinking, can I offer adequate, if not optimal, adequate test ecosystems or digital twins to the teams that want to do the right thing and decommission first? Because those infrastructure bits are sometimes neglected and you don't have the luxury of a DevOps and CI/CD pipeline and things like that. So that's a priority. Do not sit on infrastructure, the AS400, one of my favorite inspirational examples. Having risks and issues remediation quantified. I think, again, another speaker talked about 30% being on a compliance kind of attitude in your budget. Don't think all your investment's going to go to new features. Then I add my new business activity. So this is my mental checklist that then, of course, slowly trying to get rid of some architectural debt. It's never going to be completely removed, but again, you know, complexity being our enemy, this is in a very important place. Least important in this list, but most important in my heart, is this data remediation. Data is your product. Data is your raw material for your supply chain of transformation. So that is, it should be almost a reflection of the good work that you do before. But sometimes you need to deal with prior issues, prior mistakes you need to remedy, and that sometimes get neglected and people start to do workarounds in their day jobs in operations and you don't even know it. So, and for me, elevating the roles of the professionals in this industry, especially architects, you know, is a bit of a dirty word sometimes, and moving us, architects that can move us to a storytelling, from documents to maps, from maps to actions, and then from actions to results. I think to support the engineering community that will be so AI enabled, we need to think about systems and we need to think about incentives. What's the purpose? What is the intent of what we are trying to do? So I really wanted to elevate professional accountability. I wanted to plug in, if you are not familiar with the Chartered Institute for Technology Professionals, I'm a fellow of the British Computer Society, the Chartered Institute for IT, and obviously the IEEE is established international organization for engineers. You know, I feel like we need to drum up some accountability in this industry, starting with affiliating yourselves with someone that looks after ethics, code of conduct, so that we can have our voices heard a bit more. And one day, you know, maybe like the CFO has to be a chartered accountant, we have to be chartered IT professionals to be leading so many people in a critical industry like this. And finally, I'm just going to put it, obviously you will need the digital copy of this presentation because I have a few links hopefully to inspire you. What is, you know, in terms of personal responsibility, societal and environmental responsibility that we have in our roles. And that's what I wanted to share with you and ask for support for chartered professionals in our industry. Thank you. I think I used up all the time for questions and answers, do I? Do I have one? You flag the business cases, list of features, hypothetical, okay. The industry hasn't cracked the ROI drug yet. Yeah, that's why instead of fighting against the ROI argument on an investment conversation, I'm trying to factor in the components of the ROI. right? So having the cost of legacy, the cost of compliance, the cost of maintaining multiple copies into the case will make the ROI more believable. But we haven't cracked it yet, so that's why I need your help. Thank you.